Hello and welcome to part 5, the importance of poses. Today I'm taking a break from the lip sync just for a little while to discuss this. I do tend to jump around sometimes in my animation. I'll work on something for a little while and then I'll start working on something for another little while and then go back to what I was working on before. That's just kind of how I am. It helps break things up and keep my attention. So in this part of the series, we'll discuss why creating strong poses is so important for a dynamic animation covered in awesome sauce. I'm not going to start doing the blocking yet. We just want to worry about like the starting pose for our animation. We just want to make sure that that's on point and it looks really good. We'll also cover how to parent props for use in our scene. We'll start with that actually just to get it out of the way. And so let's get started. So as you can see in our scene, I've modeled and added a hat and a wrench. He's going to hand the wrench to his friend, which we will put in the scene when we start animating him, and then he will be ripping his hat off of his head when he goes to say bash me in the head. So really quick, it's really simple. On how to parent these things together. I'm not going to go into it really in depth because it's already done and I don't want to like dwell on it because we're actually supposed to be talking about poses today. I just wanted to go over it real quick. So basically, you want to create a locator to add to your wrench or your prop or your hat or whatever it is. And then you want to parent the locator to the wrench. So you select one and then the other, and then you hit P. That parents it together, and then you check to see to make sure that the parent worked properly. You select the locator, and if your wrench lights up as well, then that means that you have successfully parented it. Now, if it's backwards and you select the locator but the wrench does not light up, but you select the wrench and the locator lights up, then you've done it backwards. So you just unparent them, select the opposite. If you selected the locator first and then the wrench, select the wrench first and then the locator and then hit P. Really easy. Okay, so, and then what we'll do is, so we have it lined up with his hand pretty well. I haven't closed his hand or anything, which I will do when we start posing. So let's not worry about parenting it to his hand quite yet. Let's go to the hat because the hat is already parented to the head. So it's the same thing with the hat. You just do the locator, parent the locator to the hat, and then you would parent the locator to the control, the head control. So when you move the control, see, the hat moves with the head. It sticks on the head. At a later on a later part in the series, I will discuss animating the prop going from the head to the hand and from the hand to the ground because he's going to throw it on the ground. Same thing with the wrench from his hand to the other character's hand. A lot of people will use parent constraints and then animate the constraint itself, but I learned a technique a few years ago that's actually pretty novel, and it seems to be a little bit less complicated than the parent constraint, at least for me. What it does is it uses multiple copies of your prop and the materials. We'll go over that another time. I'm just letting you know that in the future, that's what we'll go over, and I'm rambling now. So let's go and start posing our character. I have a reference that I'm going to be using for him, and it's the original scene from the movie that I took the soundbite from. What I'm going to do is I'm not going to copy it exactly because for the purpose of this animation, he's going to be a little bit exaggerated, and the secondary character is not going to reflect what the secondary character is doing in the
I'm a
scene.
miserable, worthless hunk of slime. Here. I want you to take this crowbar and just bash my head right in. Go ahead, really, please. Just bash it right in.
You're right, Bob.
Okay, so, oh wait, stop. Okay, so that's the video reference that I have. Video reference is really, really important when you're in animation, or even if you draw the reference, drawing reference, any kind of reference, a video that you find on the internet, a video that you make yourself, you know, because making video references yourself, you control everything that you do in your reference. So, for example, say you have a character banging an anvil. I'm sure you could probably find hundreds of videos of people banging on an anvil. But say you have a character that's doing some complex martial arts moves, and you have a friend that's a really good martial artist. Well, maybe your character is doing a combination of martial arts moves that you don't find a video for. So you're going to have to, you know, film it yourself. That's part of being an animator, just like having a mirror at your desk so you can look at your facial expressions and whatnot. That's all very important. So for now, I'm going to find a good pose in my reference and see what he looks like. So let's see. Well, it's actually kind of, you know what, I'm not going to worry about the reference right now because I am going to be changing it up a little bit. So the starting pose is going to be different than it would be in the reference. So moving on. As you can see, I have lengthened our timeline. I went back negative 200 frames and then went to 300 frames. I don't think, actually I'm pretty sure that we are not going to be using this many frames. But for right now, I just wanted to lengthen the animation past the dialogue on both sides, because there is going to be animation in front of the dialogue and behind the dialogue. And how you do that is next to your auto key, which we're going to turn off for now because we don't want to actually animate anything. We just want to make our starting pose. So turn off the auto key real quick. Next to it, you see your animation preferences. Click that. And playback start and end is basically where you would put your animation that you're working on. For example, you're working on the 20 frames right before the dialogue. Well, you would go to negative 20 and 0. So you put negative 20 here and 0 here. That's the 20 frames before the dialogue starts. And then animation start and end, that's for the whole animation. So negative 200 is where it starts, and it will end at positive 300. So we have 500 frames there in the whole animation, which will change. I just wanted to show you that that's how you change that. Okay, so let's think about what a good pose for him would be. First, let's close our hand around our wrench. All right. So we've positioned the wrench in a pretty good spot for where he would be holding it naturally. So basically what we're going to do is we're just going to wrap his fingers around it. So we click here on this controller, and you have neutral, fist, and spread. Let's spread them out a little bit. Spread them out a little bit. That looks okay. Maybe we will scoot the wrench a little bit closer to where his thumb is, like the pocket where the thumb and the palm meet. Move it down just a tad, and then rotate it. Well, I think it actually looks okay there. So you can see that our thumb is kind of getting in the way. So let's, for now, grab fist. Oops, wrong way. Close the fist around it. Close the fist. Fist looks pretty good around it. Maybe a little more. Close it a little more. There we go. And so now the thumb has pretty much gone right where it needs to go. Isn't that nifty? It is kind of cutting into it a little bit, but I think it's because we probably need to rotate this a little bit and then move it up. Oh, that's almost perfect. That's actually pretty good. That's pretty good. Look at that. There we go. So now he's holding his wrench, but if we go to move his hand, he's not holding a wrench. What do we have to do? We've got to parent the wrench to the hand. So we don't want to parent it to this IK handle, because what happens when we parent it to the IK handle and we have to switch it to FK for whatever reason, we may need to use FK on this character. What's going to happen? The wrench is going to stay with the IK handle. It's not going to switch. It's not going to follow the hand with FK. So this control here does not change between IK and FK. So we're going to parent it to this control. Sometimes you could even parent it to a bone, like directly to a joint if you want. That's up to you. If there's no extra control that follows along in both IK and FK, parent it to a bone. But since this rig is actually pretty good and it's got a control that follows along with the IK and the FK, we're going to parent it to this. So same thing. Click your locator, click your control, and hit parent. And as you can see, when you click the control now, everything lights up. The locator, the wrench, everything. That's how you know that your parent has been good. So now we grab the control and oh, look at that. Look at that. It moves with the arm. Isn't that cool? Isn't that cool? So now you'll be able to move it along. And if you select the locator, you can actually animate the wrench in his hand and not mess up the parent. So, like, for example, like the wrench is not really a good example, but if you have a sword, for example, a sword, it's got a bit of weight to it, especially when you're swinging it, it's going to rotate in your hand a little bit. And so and you're going to want to, and that's for overlap, you know, it rotates in your hand a little bit, overlap in secondary motion, because of the weight of the sword. So you're going to want to be able to rotate it in the hand, a little bit. So having it set up this way is a really good setup here. So let's think about, like, how do we want him to stand? We want it, because he's just going to be standing here in the beginning. Basically, it's just going to be two people standing here having a conversation, and all of a sudden this guy freaks out and wants him to bash him in the head. Maybe he's just had a really bad day, just can't take it anymore. So that's what's going on. So let's see. It's going to be kind of funnier if he's relaxed at first, and then all of a sudden he just hands his friend the wrench, rips off his hat, and starts screaming. So the starting pose is probably not going to be too much different than what it is right now. But let's move out the feet a little. Just a little bit to start. Just a little bit. Seems to be a little rigid, so maybe if we grab his hips, maybe there, that's a little better. Knees are a little bent. Okay, and for the arms, since we actually want them to come straight down, what we'll do is select our control and turn off the IK hand, switch to FK, and rotate his arm down. See? Rotate his arm down. maybe his shoulder a little too. What do you think? Yeah, rotate his shoulder down a little bit. There. And then we would want maybe rotate it this way a little. His elbow. And then in a little. Oh no, that's not, that doesn't look good. Let's rotate the upper arm a little bit. There, that's better. That's actually pretty good right there, I think. He's just chilling there with his wrench. Okay, same thing on the other side. We don't necessarily want the both sides to be the same, so maybe we start him off with a hand on his hip, maybe. So let's try that. So his shoulder's probably not going to drop because his hand's going to be on his hip. So, okay, now let's move the elbow. Okay. And rotate the shoulder down a little more. Let's see. There we go. We're getting there. See? Grab the wrist. Move it that way, move it out. Gotta get his thumb out of his hip there. So let's this guy has like no hips, so it's gonna be kind of hard to, let's see, probably have it out like this. You know what, we're also gonna want to rotate his hips a little, because usually when you have your hand on your hip, usually when you have your hands on your hips, what happens, one of the hip that you have your hand on kind of rotates up. I don't like that. So rotate it. Let's try it again. Rotate it a little more and then grab it and move it. Move it over. There. Okay. And then maybe move this over a little. Kind of counterbalance it a little bit. We're going to rotate the upper torso a little bit to kind of counterbalance that. So there we go. And maybe pull this one out a little. No, I don't like that. Okay. So a lot of this at times is trial and error. That's like super important. You're going to get that so much. Trial and error, trial and error. So undo is your friend. Okay. It's a little awkward. It's better. Maybe his hips are a little too rotated here. So let's go back. There, that's better. That was just too much. There. Yeah, that was too much. Not so awkward anymore, because he's not quite so much. And he is a guy, so he's not going to be quite as hippie as a woman would be. Alright, so back to positioning our hand. This case, IK might be easier, but maybe not. No, I think we'll just keep it FK for now. Okay, let's pull it back a little. Maybe rotate it a little more this way. There, that's starting to work pretty well. Now, let's get this hand. Let's see, we're gonna have to do... Let's do some neutral. Yeah, see, so neutral, we've got... But we want to get his thumb, like, behind his back, because that's usually what you do when you hold your hip, right? Your thumb goes behind your back, while your hand stays. So we've got to pull it back a little more. Okay. And rotate. Okay, now here we may actually have to go in manually. You see all the little controls for the hand. We go in manually and start moving the thumb out so it can open up a little more. Let's see, what does this one do? Okay, that's for the finger. We don't need that. And this one, there we go. That opens up the thumb quite a bit there. So, let's pull it back a little more. Oh. Let's see, we'll rotate it. Boy, for such big hands, it doesn't go around his waist very easily. Okay. So we keep working and tweaking, and then so much of animation is just tweaking and, you know, trial and error and getting these things to do, you know, what you want them to do, when sometimes it just doesn't feel like they want to do that. So, oh, that looks weird, right? That looks weird. Why that looks weird? Why? We don't want that to look that weird. So, let's see. That's a little better. That's better. Let's try to flatten his hand a little bit. That might help. And pull it out like that, because there, that's better now. Push that back in a little more. Ah, see, now we have to rotate it back to the position, and his thumb is back in his side. You see, sometimes it can be quite frustrating. Let's see, or we could just have him, yeah, you know what, let's just have him leave his thumb in front, because sometimes it just doesn't work. So let's rotate it back to 0. Same thing for this one. Rotate it back to 0 and see what we can do with it the way it is. Let's actually close the thumb. Close the thumb up a little. There. Then rotate it out. A little more. Yeah, see, that's okay. That doesn't look too bad. Then, okay. We're probably gonna have to use the fist a little more. Let's see how that works. Maybe a little on the fist and a little more on, no, less on the fist. Less on the fist. Let's not do the fist. Okay. Go back to neutral, a little more on the neutral. No. A little more on the neutral, then twist, not twist, rotate some more. Rotate, and we've almost got it. Almost got it. We're going to have to get into the individual fingers in a minute. Pull it out a little. As long as the palm is like pretty much resting up on his hip there. That's what we want. So let's keep. Although I do kind of like it the way it was. Well, no. Well, it actually doesn't look too bad like that. That angle. I know you want you instinctively want to put the palm right up flush against his hip, but sometimes it doesn't necessarily look right. So sometimes you have to kind of go over what looks better than what your brain would logically want to happen. Does that make sense? I hope it does. So let's pull it out a little. Okay, and then rotate that in a little. Okay. Alright, now that's pretty good. Now let's start pulling out the fingers a little. There, see? It's still kind of in there. Okay, so there we go. Thumb's pretty good. Now let's do the fingers. And for the fingers, I usually only rotate them. Actually, I always only rotate them in Z, because that's how a finger works. It only rotates one way. It's not like a shoulder joint or a neck joint or something like that that moves in all directions. Finger joints only move in the Z axis. So don't. Well, except for it also does it a little bit in the Y. Is it Y? Let's see, Y. Oh no, that's translate. Whoops, that's ugly. Alright, so rotate. Yeah, sometimes in Y, but that's actually just the base knuckle, the one that hits your palm. That's the only one that rotates in Y. So keep in mind when you're animating to make sure that you're only animating certain joints in the axis that they're meant to animate in, because that will cause you problems in the future. Trust me on that. I have had some major problems with that in the past. So I try to be really careful about how I am rotating my joints. For this one, for his pinky, I think just to add a little personality to it, let's see what it looks like that. And maybe the middle finger too. Or not the middle, but the ring finger as well, because it gives it a little bit more of a, of a personality, let's see. And then straighten a little bit. I don't know. I actually don't like that. Okay, so let's go back to 0. This is also something that you do a lot. You try a pose, you're like, no, that doesn't work. I hate that, and then you try to fix it. So, but that does need to come out a little bit because the pinky obviously is stuck in the pants. So we do need to bring it out just a little bit. So bring that one out a little. Bring this one out a little. Bring this one out a little. And it's no longer in the pants. There we go. Let's fix that ring finger. Okay. So now we've got okay pose. Now let's actually rotate that down and fix. Let's see. Let's rotate that in a little. Rotate this arm in a little more. Oops, too far. And then, oh, too far again. Forward. There. There. It's crossing into his pants a little, so let's pull it out a little more. Pull it out this way a little bit. There. Now it's kind of laying against his leg. Let's put this foot. Let's see what it looks like with this foot out a little more. And maybe rotated a little bit. Yeah, see, he's looking kind of relaxed, right? Maybe rotate his head a little bit. Just a little. Does it look better that way? Let's see, that way? I think it's that way. Just rotate a little that way, and then maybe have me turn it, because he's actually going to be talking, you know, facing his friend, which we will put in the scene soon. So, okay. You know, I think for starters, this is an okay pose. This is just a starting pose, and when we get into the blocking, we'll go over the poses a little bit more in depth. Right now, this is a decent pose. You try to look at it from all angles and see if the you know, if the silhouette looks good. Let me pause for a moment, and I will be back 1 second to talk a little bit more about silhouette. Okay, thanks for your patience. I mean, you didn't actually have to wait because I edited this right, but I needed to take a break for a second. So we're going to talk about like using the silhouette mode. Right now we actually only want to see the character. So as you can see, I have a floor. I have a floor here now, so let's turn the visibility off on that just to get out of the way. And the same thing with the face UI. Where is the visibility on that? I think it might be on the head control. Yeah, face UI. Turn it to off for now so we can get rid of it. Okay, so you're in your scene, and on your number pad, if you hit 7, it turns off all of the lights. So as you can see, there is a silhouette, you know. So you rotate all around your character, and if the silhouette looks good, then you're good to go. The silhouette on this does not look too bad, actually. He looks relaxed and nonchalant. That's what we want, you know. And from every angle, it seems to look pretty okay. I'm pretty happy with that. And then if you want to get back out of silhouette mode, on your number pad, you just hit 5 and it goes back. Really, really super cool and really super easy. So we'll continue. The next part is going to be starting to block. I think I might start to block out the other character first. But that just depends on whether I have time to draw out the shot for that one, because that one I'm actually going to draw out the reference for instead of filming, because it's going to be kind of dramatic in the way he deals with what's going on in the scene. Or I might just start blocking out the animation for this guy. It just depends. So stay tuned and find out. Thanks for hanging with me today, and look out for the next part in our series. Thank you.